Heart of the Cat, Sarafin Warriors Book 3, by S. E. Smith. Performed by David Brenin. Prologue. Forest Kingdom on Sarafin, centuries before. Mia could see the raging fires through the open windows of the palace as she ran barefoot along the dark corridors. The brilliant flames gave the night a malevolent glow. Terrified screams rang through the air and added to the chaos and confusion. Mia's heart thundered in her chest when she heard urgent shouts behind her. She quickly turned left and ran down another long corridor to seek a place to hide. All around her she could hear the pleading voices of the servants begging for their lives before their cries were brutally silenced. She stumbled as she fled down one corridor after another in a desperate search for the one place that might save her life, and the life of her unborn child. Clad only in a thin nightgown and cloak, she shivered from shock and the cold stone beneath her bare feet. Tears blinded her, and she barely stifled the grief threatening to overwhelm her. She brushed away the tears that burned her eyes with a shaking hand. Her parents, the king and queen of the Forest Kingdom, and the palace guards were dead, murdered by traitors. Her mate had also been murdered. Mia's cat had awoken her with a hiss of warning, and frightened by her cat's urgency, she had fled down the corridor to her mate's study. Rawl often retired there in the evenings when he couldn't sleep. Mia almost hadn't had enough time to hide behind a large column. She'd heard them coming, their footsteps accompanied by the sound of screams. Then, seconds later, Mia had witnessed at least a dozen armed men stop in front of Rawl's study. Most of Rawl's attackers had concealed their faces, but her cat could sense that some of them were not from Sarafin. She had turned away, her back pressed to the column and her fist pressed against her mouth. There was no way her mate could survive such an onslaught. But Mia had been unable to abandon the desperate hope that somehow they would not kill him. She peered around the column, watching one of the men standing in the doorway, his sword dripping with Rawl's blood. His cloak didn't have a hood to conceal his features, and she had recognized his face all too well. Erebus. They had grown up together. Once she had considered him a friend. Beyond him she could see a body in the shadows of the room. Her mate lay dead, murdered by the warrior he'd thought was his best friend and ally. She had remained in her hiding place, trembling with the strength of her grief. As the group moved down the hallway, led by a man dressed in an elegant, black-hooded cloak edged in gold, Erebus had commented to another man that he hoped the attacks on the other Sarafin kingdoms were going as well as this one. Mia had listened intently as he talked about the simultaneous attacks against the Valdir and Curzon homeworlds. He said the three ruling families would soon be completely destroyed and replaced. She had recoiled when she heard Erebus mention Prince Rafvin, a royal Valdir dragon lord. She was stunned that any Sarafin would work with a Valdir prince to murder the Sarafin royal family. How could they turn on their own people? When they were out of sight, she turned and fled. It had been an hour since then, and she felt like the nightmare would never end. She heard footsteps approaching from the west wing and fruitlessly wiped at her tears as she once again squeezed as much of her body into an alcove as she could. Shifting into her cat would make her slightly more dangerous, but she was vastly outnumbered, and there were fewer possible hiding places for a tiger than there were for a woman. She held her breath as a group of warriors ran past. There was only one person she could trust now. Mia had not spoken or seen the goddess Ikaterina since Mia was a little girl, but she hoped that the goddess would hear and answer her plea now. It was not common knowledge that the very existence of the Sarafin species depended on the gift that the goddess had given them, the power to shift into large predatory cats. And it was certainly not widely known that the power came from the blood of the royal family as much as it came from the blood of the goddess Ikaterina. By destroying the royal family, the traitors were destroying themselves.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?